that you're coming from the point of view of having a child with dyslexia. And some of you are probably wondering, do they have ADHD as well? Some of you know that they have ADHD. And, you know, I'm just going to really talk about what I know well, which is ADHD. I know something about comorbidities also, and dyslexia would be one of the main comorbidities. But I think it's best that I just share my knowledge from the ADHD point of view. Yeah, so just what we do at ADHD Ireland, we are a free service. We're funded by the HSC, and our mission is to make life better for people with ADHD. And also, we provide support, education, and we promote acceptance of ADHD in Ireland. Those are kind of the three things. So we're kind of known for our support groups, mainly, and then we would have a very good website really with lots of information. You can call us and email us as well, and mostly then we're trying to, in the wider sense, just spread the word about ADHD. You know, tell people about what it's like to have ADHD and give people the supports they need really. And we have lots of courses, and we have a school accreditation program. We have different talks that we do, public talks, all of that kind of thing. But you can email me at martin@adhdireland.ie, and you know, we can give all the details at the end. Um, but just to tell you about what ADHD is, and again, some of you will know this, but it's basically standing for ADHD hyperactivity disorder. Um, and you know, nobody likes that term anymore. In fact, it's because technically this term isn't completely correct anymore. It's not really a lack of attention. There's plenty of attention there when you have ADHD. The issue is about how the attention is regulated. So it's like being in a room with 10 televisions, as opposed to one television. So when there's 10 televisions on, you can't focus on any one of them. Whereas the neurotypical person, the normal person in inverted commas, know what I mean? Hyperactivity is an issue because not everybody has the hyperactive type. Some people have the inattentive type, as we're going to see later on, and some people have a mix of the two. So not everybody's going to be bouncing around the room like the classic small boy with ADHD. And then the disorder, nobody really likes the term disorder anymore. So as you can see, everything about that term ADHD is actually, I suppose, outdated really. But look, we're stuck with this term, and that's what it's all about. Which is a lot of people. If you imagine, the typical classroom is kind of like 20 to 25, I suppose, kids. Then one person is guaranteed to have ADHD, and it can be more. It can be zero, but like you know, there's a really good chance at least one child will have ADHD, and it's a lot of people. 5% is a lot of people in the world. The reason we're seeing more ADHD is because people are better educated now, and people, especially since the pandemic, people have really come out of the woodwork because structure when they were out of the office environment. And it was the same for kids. Kids were at home as well online and found they couldn't concentrate without that structure of the classroom. It's neurodevelopmental and physiological, which means it develops as you develop. It's actually part of your wiring, really, is the thing to notice there. And if you see on the screen there, there's two brains. The one on the left is ADHD, and the one on the right is the neurotypical brain. And the prefrontal cortex is what's being shown there. This circle around it, and it's not lighting up the same as the typical brain is. So, and that's an issue because a lot of the important things that happen in your brain happen in that actual part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. We'll see more about that in a second. So it's highly genetic, highly heritable, which means if your child has it, you know you have a good chance of having it, and there's a really good chance that it's in the family. So you might know of other people in the family, the wider family, even going back generations, PhD. Essentially, it's all to do with the faulty neurotransmitters for dopamine and noradrenaline. Now, we're going to mainly talk about dopamine just to really simplify it, but it just basically means that these things aren't firing in your brain the way they should be. And so it's really like a deficit of dopamine is what's mainly causing the problem. I normally say it's like having a broken dopamine pump in your brain. So you're not pumping the dopamine to the prefrontal cortex like you should. And that affects all these systems: self awareness, inhibition, non-verbal working memory, verbal working memory, emotional regulation, motivation and task initiation, and planning. So basically, anything that you need to start and finish tasks, to maintain focus, to plan ahead is impaired when you have ADHD. Okay, because you're not getting enough dopamine. That's why the kids bounce around the classroom, generate dopamine. Because when you bounce around the classroom, you get plenty of dopamine. And so that's the whole game. That's what medication is doing as well. It's solving that problem. The medication is actually a stimulant, but it stimulates the prefrontal cortex. And all of a sudden, you're getting the dopamine you need, a steady drip, like the neurotypical person. And so we always say your brain is just wired differently, and that's okay. It's the same with dyslexia. You're wired differently, you'll see things differently. That's you know that's how you're set up, and it in the case of ADHD, it never changes. It's that's how it's going to be, and so the solutions then are many and varied. We know all the treatments here at ADHD Ireland. Outside of medication, it's all about tools and strategies, and looking after your health essentially, really, to manage it, but you're not getting rid of it really. Myths about ADHD, because there's a lot of myths out there. This is from an actual Facebook post that I saw a couple of years ago, and these are the things, real things that people were saying, that some children are just bold, that ADHD is caused by bad parenting, that it's the technology, that it's in the water. In other words, it's fluoride in the water, or it's in the energy drinks. And in other words, people think that these things are causing ADHD, right? They're Some of them can actually make ADHD worse, certainly. But it's not giving you ADHD, like so. For instance, technology. If kids are on technology a lot, yes, if they have ADHD, it's going to make their ADHD worse. But I suppose the difference is when a kid comes off technology, if they're neurotypical, they go back to being able to focus. Whereas if they're ADHD, they go back to not being able to focus. So it's not really the same with parenting. You can be the best parent in the world and give good supports, and your child will do better. But ADHD will always rear its head in some way. You understand what I mean? Um, and so then one of the other myths is, doesn't everybody have a little ADHD? Don't we all forget our keys? Aren't we all late sometimes? Don't we all find it hard to concentrate? Well, yes, we do. But I suppose the difference is, as I always say, it's chronic. A chronic condition means it happens all the time, every day. And it's this accumulative effect that actually is the problem. So it's like somebody who hurts themselves. Let's say they get a sore elbow someday, they bang their elbow, as opposed to someone with chronic pain. Okay, that's the difference. Like with chronic pain, it's kind of every day you're living with it. Whereas something that happens every so often is completely different. And when your child is sitting in the classroom and they have ADHD, they may find it hard to concentrate because usually nothing about the classroom experience is actually stimulating their brain. It might be the odd thing, it might be the wrong kinds of things, like something interesting happening outside the window, or an interesting person next to them that's kind of distracting them. Or it might be something they're thinking about, like something that happened last night, something they're watching on television, or maybe they're thinking in future, but they find it hard to concentrate on maybe maths or English, because it's not stimulating. In fact, there's only four things that stimulate the ADHD brain, because the ADHD brain is interest based, not importance based. So for the neurotypical person, they can make themselves very easily concentrate on what's important. For the ADHD brain, what's interesting is the important thing. It's activated by interest itself, anything interesting, anything is interesting. Star Wars, I don't know, Minecraft, whatever it is. Competition, a challenge is interesting to someone with ADHD. That charges up their brain. Novelty, anything new, a new person, a new film, a new game, anything like that. And an urgency. This is why college students leave everything till the last minute. 2 days before they will start the assignment, they should have started 2 months ago. By that stage, it's kind of too late. But that's how it works. Then all of a sudden you've got plenty of dopamine and now you can concentrate, but it's too late. So it's important to know what motivates the ADHD brain, and all the hacks that we talk about are based around this. If you want your child to clean their room, don't say to them, clean your room. Say, let's make a game out of this. Can you clean your room in 5 minutes? Can you clean your room before your brother? That's a challenge. And it's novel and it's urgent. You know what I mean? And it's the same in the classroom. That's what you have to do. ADHD. So what does ADHD feel like? It feels like you have a busy mind. Your mind is restless. Your mind is going everywhere at once. All the thoughts feel of equal importance. People with ADHD find it very hard to know which thing to do first, because if there's a list in their head of 5 things, they all seem important. If a child sits down to do their homework, they don't know what to do first. If you send them in to clean the kitchen, they don't know what to do first. They don't know if they should start with the dishwasher or should they sweep. So, they just will stand for 5 minutes until you discover them with a cup in their hand and wonder what's going on. And I should say, I know this all too well. I have ADHD and my daughter has ADHD. And we kind of try to navigate it every day. So ADHD can be quite invisible. I think with dyslexia is probably reasonably uh, easy to spot because the child just will not be able to read. Maybe Una has a better idea about that, but I think, you can kind of pick up relatively early. Um, and that's not like what ADHD is. ADHD can be harder because, especially with girls mask quite well. They're very social, and they might be not seeming to be an issue. Like a girl might not be causing any trouble in the classroom. They might just be looking out the window, and they're doing their homework reasonably well, but people don't see the issue sleeping. They don't see the feeling bad about yourself. They don't see that it feels like there's 10 televisions in your head, and not just one. Like we said, it's a very cluttered mind. The boys are easier to see because the boys tend to be more of the physical, hyperactive type, which we'll see in a minute. But essentially, it can be hard to spot. And yeah, this is just to reiterate that the boys uh, tend to show an internalized version of ADHD, inattentiveness, low self-esteem. The boys tend to show the externalized. Now, this is generally speaking. You have boys who just have the internalized type as well, but the boys are picked up more in their younger days because they're running around the place, jumping and causing trouble, mostly for the teachers. The teachers will see them as the troublesome child in the class. And there's a psychiatrist called William Dodson, who estimates that by the age of 12, children who have ADHD receive 20,000 more negative messages from parents and teachers than a neurotypical person. And this, as you can imagine, can affect self-esteem. And this isn't direct messages like you are useless, or you're lazy or whatever. This is messages like, are you not out of bed yet? Your sister is out of bed. Can you not go down and eat your breakfast like your sister? This kind of thing. It's those small negative messages that add up to esteem that the child will feel. And then as an adult, it can be really debilitating for them because they feel they can't do anything right. And this leads to things like rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria, um, and various things that we associate with ADHD. So now this is relevant to this evening's talk because 60 to 80% of people with ADHD have one other condition, and dyslexia is a big one. We also have ASD, you can have one, or you can have all the ones you see on the screen. You can have Tourette's syndrome, dyslexia, anxiety, and ASD, and it's a mixed bag. Everybody gets a different flavor of ADHD and other comorbidities. I always say because it's you can have a little of one and a lot of another, and there are different types. So it can really be just a very unique, and we do try to figure out what's going on and try to put a label on somebody because it actually helps in the long run to know what you're dealing with. Some people don't like the labels, but I think it can really help to pick these things apart and say how much is dyslexia, how much is ADHD. Um, and the other thing to say about dyslexia and ADHD, I think, is that it's like there's two barriers to learning, because the first barrier is actually being able to see the world. And then the second barrier then would be concentrating enough to take it all in. So like you have two issues there. Um, you know, Somebody who is neurotypical and had dyslexia might be able to concentrate for longer and do better, but the person with ADHD is, set up so they can't concentrate for long in the first place. So you can see how it can be an issue. So another thing with ADHD is the executive function. This is the task man, basically the thing that automatically allows us to plan and to put things in order. Now, without that traffic light system in the brain, this is what happens in the picture here. You get this crazy traffic scene where there's nobody calling the shots, really, if you like. Other people like to think about it like an air traffic controller and not allowing the planes to land on time. One good solution for this with ADHD is to write it all down and make a piece of paper your executive function. With dyslexia, this isn't as easy as all that. And so these are the kinds of things you may need to think of a different workaround to get your executive function going. Rejection sensitivity dysphoria, rejection sensitive dysphoria is something that's talked about a lot, where a child might become very sensitive to rejection, again, because the self-esteem is constantly trampled on over a long period of time. And it's more than being just a response to rejection or criticism. It can almost be like physical pain to them, because they just cannot bear to feel they're useless, because I suppose they've gotten so much of it. And as you can see, most people with ADHD have this thing called RSD, and 1 in 3 find it the hardest part of ADHD. So that's a big deal. And then just briefly, this is just about the scaffolding in school. I'm trying to show here that in primary school, there's a lot of scaffolding. There's a lot of teachers and parents minding you and making sure you're on track in the right place at the right time. You have one teacher, you have a few subjects, you know when your lunch break is. In secondary school, it's a very hard transition because all of a sudden you have a big school, you have lots of teachers, you have a locker, you have the social issues as well, trying to make friends, trying to fit in. And then by the time college comes around, usually the wheels fall off, because at that point, you're expected to be around all the rest of it, and you're expected to be autonomous in terms of putting your assignments in on time. So you can see that just to be aware that the scaffolding reduces over time, and it can make life hard for people with ADHD. And scaffolding is just structure in your life, really. So there are 3 types of ADHD. and I've just put in the three amigos there. That means something to me. I'm from the 80s. I grew up in the 80s, and so like there's in hyperactive type and the combined type. Now, the inattentive type is a type I have mostly, and I'm famously scatty and distracted in various situations, except where I'm interested, and then I'm hyper focused. I'm interested in ADHD, so you've got me at my best here. But ask my wife. In certain situations, I won't be so tuned in. The inattentive type is basically trouble starting, finishing tasks. You'll have issues with forgetfulness, punctuality, losing things. Um, Motivation can be lacking, because again, the dopamine isn't getting to the prefrontal cortex. You kind of don't want to do anything sometimes. You just feel like doing something exciting, but you can't do something exciting. Zoning out in conversation, easily distracted. Classic inattentive type. And dreaminess as well. The girls, more than the boys, tend to be the dreamy type. And you got the impulsive hyperactive type. This is normally associated with boys. We have a girl here in the picture just to show that the girls can have it too. But you might have a boy, sorry, or a girl who's always on the go, restless. They might give a puck to the person next to them, if only just to get the dopamine. They might they can sometimes throw things across the classroom, blurt things out, have their hand up because they desperately need to say something, but they're not listening to anything the teacher is saying, finding it hard to wait their turn in the playground, that kind of thing. That's really the hyperactive type. Also, the bouncing around the classroom that you always hear about is the hyperactive type. And then there's the combined type. And so here's what makes the picture more complex. Again, you can have a combination of the two. In fact, most people have the combination. So they'll have inattentive and hyperactive going on at the same time. So I'm just going to move through it quite quickly here now, about ADHD, because the ADHD people in our world are people, say the people who made our world, the inventors and the sports people and the actors and the filmmakers and the musicians. ADHD is big in the world of creativity. So people are energetic and athletic and creative and imaginative and sensitive. You got the sensitive artists. They are passionate. They are persistent. All of these people. Uh, and I'm not sure that they know how Einstein had it, but I'm sure they're going on traits that he displayed. Certainly, Einstein was a different kind of a thinker. You got Michael Phelps, who has won 20% of the gold medals ever won by the United States. Zoe Deschanel, you might have seen her in Elf over Christmas. All these people have changed our world. So some people call it a superpower. I say absolutely, it's a superpower, but that's not the end of the story. Even if you make it like these people, still have anxiety. You may still have personal issues, where you forget people's names, forget that it's their birthday, all kinds of things where it can still get you, and you still need to work every day on it. Um, Treatment wise, I won't spend too much on this. I want to get to some tools and strategies, but basically, there's the medical route. There's what we do, which is psychoeducation, which is basically going out into the community and teaching people about ADHD. And then there's the tools and strategies themselves. So look, I will send on these slides anyway, so you have an idea. If your child is ADHD, first port of call is the doctor. Normally, they will refer you either private to a private clinician or through CAMS. And obviously, the public system is severely lacking at the moment. And even the private route can be an issue because there aren't a whole lot of child psychiatrists in the country. But the GP is the first person you go to. If you are getting diagnosed, we always recommend that you know the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Because while a psychologist can diagnose for ADHD and treat it, they can't give you medication. Only a psychiatrist can give you medication. Money, you may go to a psychologist and find you have to start again with a psychiatrist if you want the medication. So just a word to the wise there. Psychoeducation, that's pretty much what we do there. I'll just fly through that really. It's just all the things that we do at ADHD Ireland. Tools and strategies. So if your child is ADHD, we always say the first thing you should do is externalize everything. Okay, because what you got to do is set up the environment so that the child will find it easy. So if they have a bag, a school bag, have a hook in the house where they can hang the school bag. Have a bowl by the door where they can put their phone, or they can put whatever they need to put in it, their glasses, something that they always lose. Everything should have a place with the label, ideally, that they know where to put everything. That way you're setting up your environment to make it easier for them. Have a lot of physical clocks around the place because they have an issue with time. The internal clock is it takes you 10 minutes to get out the door. It usually will take you 50 minutes, let's say. And then so you're confused about time. So when they're doing their homework, you could have a sand timer next to them or one of those windy kitchen timers. They'll have a much better sense then of how long they're supposed to study. You could say, let's just do 10 minutes. If they find it hard to start, let's do 10 minutes and then take a break. That makes much more sense to them than just sitting them down and saying, do their homework. So what you're trying to do, going back to this structure again and scaffolding, you're trying to doing because it makes much more sense when you put things in a framework. Another thing is executive function, like we said, use a piece of paper to write down all the things you need to do, and then order things on that piece of paper, and then schedule them. Body doubling is brilliant. You might find your child works better if you sit next to them when they have ADHD. That's because body doubling is very effective. That's where you feel accountable to somebody else. If you leave a child with ADHD in a room on their own, they probably won't do their homework. If you sit next to them, they probably will. So you can do this very easily by sitting a sibling next to them. If they don't fight with the sibling, it can be very effective. Bring everything into the now, because a child with ADHD might be able to conceive of something that's a month down the road. Let's say the teacher says you have a project to get in a month down the road. It means nothing to them. Instead of instead of one deadline, you need to give them, let's say, 8 deadlines or 4 deadlines. Instead of check in after 4 weeks, they should be checking in every Monday. That's bringing things into right now. You know, create a routine. So if your child has issues getting out of bed in the morning, everything should be set up the night before. Their clothes should be put out, the bag should be packed, put the lunch in the fridge, setting an alarm with more time than they need for the morning. Then prepare your checklist for the morning. In the morning, you follow the checklist, you get up with the alarm, you drink your water, you get dressed immediately, no devices, you eat, brush your teeth, blah, blah, blah. And then you're checking off the checklist with the child to them than just telling them to do things. And the thing with the checklist is you can never get rid of the checklist. It's only watertight if the checklist is going. If you stop doing the checklist, it'll soon go back to chaos. And even I use a checklist. I'm 48 and I use a checklist because I know it works. So don't feel you're being a baby or your child is being a baby. That's what we need to do when we've ADHD. That's what actually works. Um, then they're going to be flattened from a day of masking, from a day of working 3 times as hard as everybody else usually. So don't make them do their homework straight away. Let them rest for half an hour, give them a snack, let them go for some exercise. What's this doing? Bringing up the dopamine. Okay. And then their brain can work when they have dopamine. And then maybe write a short homework schedule, use the timing thing I was telling you. The Pomodoro technique is actually 20 to 25 minutes and then a break. For some kids, you might need to praise them for what they do because, as we said, the self-esteem is an issue. For all the negative things they've heard, you can make up for that by praising what they're doing well. And then when they get confidence and they feel, you know what, there's certain things I can do well, they will shine. And I know we're probably running out of time there, Una. I don't know how much time we actually have left. But just briefly for school, we always say if you're moving, you're learning. So this is why fidget toys work and doodle in school, because then their brain is working. And you can see that ADHD plus fidgeting, so if they're allowed to doodle, it's nearly as lighting up as much as a typical brain. And then you can reassure them, communicate well with them, giving them information, and encourage them to ask for help. These are the kind of basic things that you can do to help kids. But more specifically, in classrooms, have them right up in front of the teacher, away from any distractions, or resources that aren't needed at the time. Um, they should be ideally not next to somebody who's going to distract them. So it's just all about what can I do in a classroom so that my child isn't distracted? What's the best chance I can give them? And to explain this to the teacher that they need just to be away from distractions, and ideally up in front of the teacher. And this isn't just for young kids. I know there's young kids in the picture. This is for secondary school students too. And then all the classic, make sure they have a fidget toy if they need it. And give them rewards, give them regular breaks. Like the movement breaks are great because again it generates dopamine, then they can think, then they can focus. Explain things with colorful maps and proper templates, like we'll see a template there in a second. And support their executive function of the lesson on what you did previously. Simplify the task into small bite-sized chunks, and then simple instructions. The teacher shouldn't be writing on the board while they're talking. That's too much for somebody with ADHD. Just do one thing at a time, and then make the teaching more interesting by having the kids in groups, let's say, for some part of the lesson, because that's more fun than just on your own and just trying to take it all in. Deadlines for everything, lots of deadlines, because that's what works for people with ADHD. And so I was telling you about the templates there. This is a really good template here with the burger. That makes much more sense to somebody with ADHD than just telling them you need to do an intro, 3 paragraphs, and then an outro. If you actually show them what that's like, then it'll make much more sense. And these things are left, right, and center on Twinkle and the like. So you should download them. Similarly with the narrative writing template there, it's just breaking down, I suppose, what a story is in a visual way.